All right, good morning, everybody. It was really a great pleasure to work with the CUR team, and I had the opportunity to work on this project. So what I'm going to talk about today is the project that I've been thinking about in the past few months. Uh, so relate to impact of COVID-19 on food access in Maricopa County. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. So I'll introduce the problem and then briefly talk about research questions and then the method and data to be collected and results, and briefly talk about the results and deliverables. So just a background about food access to food insecurity issue. So this is actually a worldwide issue. I just listed some of the data here. In 2017, so FAO estimated that 1 out of every 9 people is considered undernourished. So studies have identified 3 major factors related to food insecurity. So the #1 issue is always poverty, and some other factors are related to high food prices, and also unequal food distribution. So in 2018, the estimation shows that in the United States, about 11.1% of U.S. households were found food insecure. So here you see, I show a map here. This is the worldwide food insecurity issue. So you see here, North America, so about 12%. The overall population food insecure, and 3% really severe food insecure. Compared to some other countries or regions, you do see very, very high proportion of people who are food insecure. So the worldwide rate at 26% of people are food insecure, and 11 are really severe food insecure. So coming back to the United States, so I made a map based on the data collected by USDA. So just to show how food insecurity rates vary from state to state. So you do see some states are better. So those green states are better. So the rate is from 0 to 9 something percent. But you do see other states, some state like New Mexico, Oklahoma, those states, they have relatively higher food insecure rates. And Arizona is about 13%, so in this range. And in terms of Arizona, so I've also made graphs and pictures based on the data collected from USDA. So this is by county. So some rural counties you do see, so this is like number of food deserts, or not number, it's a percent of food deserts in each county. So you'll see there's some rural counties you do see very, very high percentage of food deserts, like some, I don't remember what's the green, but you see Maricopa County, although we have relatively low percentage, but we have larger population. I'm going to show more data about Maricopa County. So actually Maricopa County accounts for about 32% of the overall food desert population in the state. So that's the largest portion compared to other counties, because Maricopa County is much larger than many other counties. So in the context of COVID-19, so COVID-19 has done a range of damages in different ways. So one thing is related to the economy. So we have much higher unemployment rates. So reports show that more than 36 million people filed for their initial unemployment benefits, and the high unemployment rates have pushed millions of families into food insecurity. Together with that, you have this social distancing requirement. Actually, this requirement has affected the ability and the way that people obtain food. So I think Katie earlier mentioned that this particular individual who probably needs to rely on public transportation, but now because of the high risk of virus exposure, so this individual might be more comfortable walking to an alternative food outlet. So this social distancing requirement would affect many people in terms of the way they obtain food. And also another dimension is related to vulnerability of the food system. So recently, there's several supply chain disruptions to the major meat packing facilities. And also there's expected severe labor shortage in their agriculture system due to the suspension of the work visas. And then also food assistance resources are more strained than ever. So in New York, actually 40% of their super kitchen network was closed during COVID-19. So there's this national survey and project. They just look at the food insecure rate during COVID-19, and you see the curve here. So this is from 2001 to 2018. But April 2020, you have really high food insecure rates compared to all the time periods in the past 17 years. And in Maricopa County, actually, this is a report about their Mesa Public School, the school meal program. So they had to close some of the sites. Again, so this is related to the food assistance resources. We have very limited resources now. And then if I link the entire kind of context and research with the existing food access studies, so a lot of food access studies have been mainly focused on spatial accessibility. So it's related to whether you have healthy stores within a certain distance or in your neighborhood. And for instance, this food desert definition heavily relies on whether, for instance, whether you have a healthy food store or supermarket or grocery store within, say, a mile or 0.5 mile from your neighborhood, from your home. So because of COVID-19, I think we need to rethink about how we should assess food access, because we might need new way of food acquisition. So during COVID-19, people started to use online food shopping. But if we want to use online food shopping, we need to have a credit card or bank account. That's not necessarily true for everybody. And also we need to have internet access. For the population groups who rely upon SNAP or WIC or EBT card or vouchers, some of the online outlets do not allow them to use those payment methods. So this may impose additional challenges for certain population groups. And then one question will be how the new way of food acquisition would affect healthy food access, especially for vulnerable population groups. So my research questions will be focusing on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on food access and food security. So I will look at how the three important factors interplay in this research question. So one is related to economic stress, and the second is new rules for obtaining food, and then vulnerability of the food system. And I'm also interested in finding out whether and how COVID-19 changes people's perception about the resilience of the current food system, especially the conventional food system and local food system. I think some of our previous fellows talked about having their own gardens, growing their own food might be something people are thinking about now. So in terms of food systems, we have this conventional food system. So that involves large scale food production, large scale food distribution. So for instance, we see like supermarkets, so those belong to the conventional food systems. And then, so this is actually the major play in the entire food system because it accounts for the majority of food production and food distribution and consumption. But on the other hand, we do have local food systems where food production and distribution occur in a relatively smaller geographic territorial scale. So for instance, we have a community support agriculture, community gardens, and some like our fellows talked about farmers market and some other outlets. So before this, we've done some research about food access in Maricopa County. So I'm not sure you guys see the map here. So we have some conventional food distributors, like those supermarkets, and then some local food outlets, community gardens, farm. So we have like a mobile food market like Farm Express, farmers markets and CSA pickup sites. So we collected all the data through various sources and we mapped them. And we also calculate from each neighborhood how close those outlets are. So if you look at, so the conventional retailers, for instance, supermarkets, large grocery stores, the average travel distance, I mean, I'm looking at all the neighborhoods, is 1.15 miles. And if I look at local food as a whole, it's about 2.2. But again, so we have relatively fewer local food outlets compared to the conventional retailers. So we have about half the number of the conventional food stores in terms of the local food stores, food outlets. So the distance is also about twice. So that's probably is they probably distributed somehow in spatial context, probably in a similar way. And here it just shows within a mile. So this the green part is a conventional food retailers. So you can serve, so within a mile you serve about 40 something, a little bit over 40%, and then local food outlets about a little bit over 20%. So again, it's just because local food outlets are just half the size of the conventional food outlets. But in terms of what kind of neighborhoods those different types of food outlets are serving, you see the huge difference. So the supermarkets or conventional retailers, so low income, and so if we look at low income, medium or high income population groups, so the supermarkets, they serve about 58% low income people, but and compared to 44% of medium or high income within a mile. But if we look at the local food store, so those local food outlets actually focus more on low income neighborhoods. If we look at less than 1 mile, you have about 38% versus 14% concentrated on the moderate or high income neighborhoods. So if just summarize the findings based on previous research, we noticed that although the conventional retailers and local food outlets, they provide service to similar amount of people. I mean, based on the number of sites they have, but actually local food outlets focus more on serving low income and vulnerable population groups. So that's the previous research. Just building on the previous research for this particular project, we want to develop a new food access metric to account for. So previously, a lot of food access metric only focused on like just income or proximity to food retailers. But I want to actually look at also access to banking, internet, and transportation. Because during COVID-19, so if we want to use online, or if I want to actually use a healthy food store, if I don't have a car, I probably I have a very big concern about using public transportation. Probably I have to rely upon either walk or some support from my friends or the network to provide the drive. So I think that having access to some kind of means to do the transportation is also very critical. And another component of the project will be focusing on developing a survey to look at in-store food shopping during COVID-19, online food shopping, and particularly we have online food shopping for in-store pickup and for delivery, and their food security status and the perception about the current food systems. And data collections, I've already collected existing food retailers in the region. So I need to collect information about access to banking, internet. I have the information about transportation. And for the survey, I've already developed the survey and I've submitted the IRB. Several colleagues helped me with the survey. and the IRB has been submitted, and I just got a response from IRB. So there's some kind of minor wording in the consent forms that I need to fix. So after that, I hope things will be good. And deliverables, I plan to do 1 or 2 conference presentations. Probably I will do another 1 or 2 journal articles. One will be focusing on this new metric development. Another will be based on the survey. And based on the work, because currently the survey will be mainly online, so I want to expand that kind of efforts to reach out to more vulnerable population groups. Probably I'm thinking about putting together a grant proposal based on that idea. And then the survey data summary will be shared with the local organizations, for instance, MACO in the Valley of Sun United Way and local food banks. And the implications of the study, I think this new food access metric might have some important impacts in the field of food studies, because currently a lot of studies mainly focus on just the spatial aspect. I think, and also this food assistance programs, if I'm thinking about SNAP, so WIC EBT cards, so a lot of them are not actually eligible, or not, a lot of food outlets don't accept those payments. So maybe this study will help provide some insights into the barriers there. So I think this might be helpful for some policy formulations. So the study has the potential, again, to provide some insights into how to solve some of the issues related to healthy food access. So I'm thinking about food deserts, for instance. Food deserts are actually neighborhoods where people don't have access to a food store because the food store might be too far. But if they can use online food shopping, if the food assistance program allows them to do that, then whether you have a food store existing in your neighborhood might not be that important. Although it is important, but maybe it would not be that important. And also, hopefully, the study has a potential will be helpful for communities to prepare for future shocks like COVID-19. So that's a
couple of questions on here too. So I know you're going to do your acknowledgements really quick if you want to run through those, and we can look at them a little bit later. But I want to direct you to questions because you have a few.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so I'm very grateful for their CURT team, Patricia, for providing this opportunity to allow me to study this important topic. And actually, Natalia actually got me connected with the Valley of the Sun United Way. So we're in the discussion of getting some of the data. And also all my colleagues who helped with the survey, and my graduate student, one of my graduate students who helped code the survey on Quadrants.
Okay, so there are a few questions, and just maybe some of them are comments, but I'm going to zone in on a couple of them are about the transportation. So Michael, I think you have the most specifically articulated question. Do you want to go ahead with that one?
Yeah, so I think this is absolutely fascinating. And a couple of questions kind of bubbled up as I was listening. You know, one is the price difference between local food outlets and grocery stores. So I know you had mentioned that farmers markets can be cheaper, you can get more. I wonder how the price differences might vary across other kinds of local foods. I don't know if that's a good question or if I'm just ignorant. And so there's that piece. The other thing is, you know, when it comes to folks using grocery stores, you know, is proximity an indicator that it's their go-to grocery store? So if a place is local and closer by, will folks choose to drive that extra mile to go to like a bigger grocery store or like a more recognizable brand name? And again, I can't tell if this is a refinement, a possible refinement in the data, or something that everybody who does this understands, and I just have no idea. But I figured I'd bring it up because they kind of popped up. Thank you very much.
I think you made very good points about, so food access is very complicated. So I want to start with the price comment. So there are many different forms of local food outlets. So farmers market is one of the forms. You can also do community gardens or your own kind of food production. So farmers market, I've done some studies on farmers market a couple of years ago. So there are also different types of farmers markets. You do have some farmers market at upscale neighborhood. In those neighborhoods, some of the food items might be more expensive than you normally see in a grocery store. And there are also, I've talked with some of the farmers there, and they also sell their product in some low income neighborhoods, farmers market there, they would charge much less. It's also related to some of the overhead the farmers market, like that particular site charges the vendors or the farmers. So there's a great kind of variety there in terms of the prices, and also some of the products at the farmers market are fresh, organic kind of thing. So some studies show that compare with the same kind of quality level at the grocery stores, they tend to be more reasonable. So the prices at farmers markets. The second is related, I believe it's related to complexity in terms of shopping. So yes, so currently a lot of food access study focus on whether you have a store in your neighborhood, but sometimes, so one of my previous studies showed that actually people often forego the nearest store to some other stores for various reasons, maybe loyalty to a certain brand or some kind of particular goods they would like to buy at that particular store. But they always, so we found that 70% of people always go to the nearest brand, the nearest of the brand they choose. So it's very complicated. So just focusing on only on the distance from my home to a store may not necessarily be a very good predictor that the person will be using that particular store.